Hello everyone, welcome back to another G1 Transformers review. As you can see, I'm doing yet again another Pretender. Now this guy is Stranglehold, who is a Decepticon Pretender from the second wave of Pretenders. So like Octopunch, he's the slightly smaller one. Unusual in itself because of the humanoid nature, being a Decepticon. Most of the humanoid ones were more on the Autobot side. The Decepticons mainly were modelled on monsters, whereas this guy looks like a bit of a steroid enhanced Tom Selleck, but in a kind of gladiatorial sort of outfit. I'll give you a quick 360 of this guy so that you can see some of the detail on him. A little bit chunky from the side view and a bit bulky on the back there, where he's got sort of like some, well, effectively almost like some kibble, though it actually serves no purpose other than to add some bulk for the inner robot to be housed. Quite well painted, quite a nice red sort of slash paint app on the front. Again, sort of like these sections here, I would believe is probably the colour plastic on the purple on this arm, and the actual flesh colour is the paint app. And I would probably hazard a guess that the boots and the sort of waist piece being brown are probably the colour plastic, and again the flesh is painted on the torso as well. But some very nice facial detail with the moustache and the eyes, really well painted when you consider the time this guy came out in, about 89, I think it is, 88, 89. You know, quite nicely done. Lots of moulding detail on it, not always clear, but if I put the light onto it, even on the waist piece there's some really nice detailing. Now, what I would say is pluses and minuses of the second wave of Pretenders. Plus is you don't have so many sort of loose bits like a belt, things like that, whereas on the first wave ones they all came with belts and they're either easy to damage or lose through the period of time. Downside is the fact that these guys were effectively downsized, and the inner robot really does suffer for it. So before I get too much into the figure, I would say this is more a figure if you are seriously into G1 cartoons and toys, then this is probably more along your lines. If you are just a general Transformer collector, you know, this is kind of more the retro niche sort of market really. They can be quite expensive to pick up, especially complete. Now mine is actually even missing one small gun, and I would only pick that up if I saw it for a reasonable price, but they can go for stupid money. If you want a sort of reference of the size, sort of Octopunch's gun for the robot is about the same size. This in itself I would recommend only picking up for around about the £30–35 mark if you're going to get one of these, and for that you want virtually complete. You do see some go for much more. They're asking sort of 50, 60, even 80, 100 quid for some of these, and that is only seriously worth considering if it is absolutely mint and boxed. But anyway, getting to the actual figure. Now, as with all of the Pretenders, you get a sort of rubbery plastic weapon, which in this case again is the sort of white or very light grey gun. Nicely moulded detail. Again, can suffer from the sort of foxing, so that's something to watch out for on it. Sort of browny, sort of stainy patches, a little bit like nicotine on it. But as you can see, that's nice and clear. Whether or not the peroxide would actually bring that back if it was actually foxed, I don't know. I can only sort of say if anyone wants to try that, you do so at your own risk, sort of thing. I should not imagine it would harm this more rubbery sort of plastic, but whether it would have the correct effect on the foxing, I don't know. Anyway, so that's his main blaster. Now I can actually leave that in his hand because it serves no other purpose than to be Stranglehold's actually his own gun in the Pretender version of him. Other removable piece is this sort of shoulder panel piece in sort of purple colour, light purple. And that just pegs on into that small hole there. In Pretender mode, it's literally there just to kind of stop it from getting lost, basically. Doesn't really serve a purpose, and it doesn't really detract from the figure once you take it off. So again, this is only sort of necessary for the robot mode. So again, if you're not worried about displaying him that way, not necessarily something you need to get anyway. Now the last removable piece is his helmet. Now I'll take that off, which is quite a snug fit, and I'll bring that in. Now it's quite nicely moulded, some decent moulding detail all the way around, and again it's a sort of slightly bendy rubbery plastic, which does help it get on and off the actual head of the figure. Yeah, pretty good little thing, and again can be a bit of a pain to pick those up if you're looking for a spare one. Now you can see his head detail without the helmet. Now the other factor to look on any of these figures is for paint wear. Now you tend to get it on these back light painted sections, and of course his hair, which if the helmet's been lost, the head might have took a bit of a bashing, and even taking the helmet on and off of this guy can wear the paint, so that's something you really should keep an eye out for when getting one of these. Now getting to the actual robot inside, as with all the Pretenders, you just split it open, and inside you get a bit of a jumbled up figure at the moment, and that's simply just to get it to go inside the Pretender shell. Can be a bit of a pain to figure out a way to actually get this guy inside his Pretender shell. Now I can pop the helmet back on, and you can kind of leave Stranglehold off to one side. That's sort of more or less him done with. Now get into what is effectively the robot mode inside. Now first of all, we need to straighten this guy out. Now there are two ways of doing his legs. First of all, move the arm out of the way. Now you can turn the alt mode legs upwards like so, so that these prongs are just about the same level as the feet. And if you turn them like so, he will stand, but kind of looks a little bit kibbly, to say the least. You can, of course, keep them out back, and they are less obvious from the front, so it all comes down to how you want to display it and how you want it to show. And I thought as well, this side, it kind of looks like he's got some kind of launchers on his legs. Kind of makes it look a little bit better, but it will depend. Obviously, if you look at it that way, it looks a bit naff. So it's personal choice really. As I said, I haven't got the small gun, which is a little yellow gun to match his colouring, and it does have an actual hole in his hand to actually hold the weapon, which is unusual in itself, because on a lot of these Pretenders of this size, they had holes on the sides of the arms, like Octopunch's one, because the actual hands were too small to actually hold the weapons in most cases. Anyway, I'll bring Stranglehold's robot mode into the camera so you can see the moulding detail on him. Quite reasonably moulded, not hugely detailed, but pretty well done for the size of this guy. He's about the same size as a Cyberverse figure. Could have done with some more paint apps on it, but it was a pretty basic little figure at the time anyway. Now, getting to his alt mode, you need to flip up the animal head on his back and cover robot head. Flip the yellow actual robot legs round and sort of just move the animal ones out of the way till they connect up correctly up there. Now at the moment it's hard to know which way to actually put this guy up, and it's governed by the head. So as with the legs, you bring the front and rear legs down to match the direction the head's facing, and you get a basic little sort of rhinoceros sort of little figure. Now this guy is pretty basic, again quite nice, but at this point it looks a little bit bare on top and a bit empty. So what you do is, in that hole there, which is formed by the two legs fitting together, you take the purple part with the pin, and the pin goes down into that hole like so, and that gives a rhinoceros its back and also a tiny little tail, which is the hook on that purple piece. Now if you did have, as I don't, the little yellow gun, that would also peg into that hole on his back, so it could actually be a weapon sort of on the back of the actual rhinoceros as well. So quite well designed in that way. As you can see, in comparison, it's a very small alt mode for the robot compared to the actual Pretender shell. Like I say, it's a bit of a bugbear. On these second wave ones, the designers really didn't incorporate as much space. With the first wave ones, the Pretenders actually stayed almost in their robot form, and their legs were inside the sort of legs of the actual Pretender shell, whereas of course these guys have just got to fit into the torso, so it's a little bit, yeah, not so good, and that has restricted greatly the actual size of the robot. That's about it really. There's not much else to say about him. It's a shame these guys didn't match and appear more in the Western cartoon. They made more of an appearance on the later Japanese lines like Victory and that. Actually, I'm trying to think, that's probably Master Force more than Victory for these guys, but it is a real shame that they didn't appear more. They did appear quite commonly towards the end of the Marvel G1 comic, but again, mainly it wasn't really this you saw, it was this. So in a sense, the character and the essence of the characters have actually come through from the Pretender shells rather than the inner robot, which is technically the Transformer. It kind of added another dimension to the toy line at the period when they came out, but it is kind of tenuous of Hasbro trying to reinvent the line at that point. I don't know how successful it was. These second wave ones are a little bit harder to pick up and more expensive to pick up, probably because they weren't as popular, which, looking back on it now, obviously we all wish back then we went out and brought those rarer and more obscure figures. To try and sort of get them now is horrendously expensive, but again, that is kind of the judgment of the time. They weren't as popular at the time because as a toy they're actually not as good as, say, some of the earlier G1 stuff, and even some of the subsequent G2 stuff is an improvement on these guys. But yeah, like I say, this is a real niche G1, real G1 fans, and the real vintage collector is more what this guy should be marketed towards as a second hand figure. Anything else I should say? I can't really think of anything offhand, so I shall leave the review there rather than keep waffling on. Say thank you to everybody who subscribed recently and to all of my regular viewers, and yeah, I hope to see you again for another Transformers review. Thanks for watching.